I'd like to say good evening to each and every one of you. My name is Naomi. I'm an intern here for Trio. Tonight's seminar deals with creating a savings plan and budget, and we have two amazing people who came here to help us out, Chris and Danielle. And they're with the Ameritrust Credit Union. So I'd like to thank you guys for taking your time to come speak to us. And this
Thank
is for
you so much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. I'll let you guys.
All right. My name's Chris Wolgamott. I work at Ameritrust Credit Union. My job at the credit union is as a financial counselor. So I direct our financial counseling department. We meet with people both one-on-one and in the classroom to teach about personal finance, financial management, financial literacy, however you want to say it. It's what we teach. And it's something that I've kind of grown to become a passion of mine. I've been doing this specific job at Ameritrust for about the last 8 years. And I've been with Ameritrust as an organization for almost 20 years. So all of my experience in my career has been in the banking world, and most of it has been doing financial literacy and working with people specifically with their finances and coming to the classroom and doing this as well. This is Danielle. She's with me today from the branch that's just over here at 23rd and Haskell, or Harper, 23rd and Harper. So if you have any questions about Ameritrust, specifically, or would like to talk to her about any accounts or anything like that, she's here with us this afternoon to talk a little bit about that. We're going to jump right in because we have a full 45 minutes of stuff to talk about, and I want to get you guys out of here right on time. So this presentation, you've got it titled as Budgeting for the New Year, but really it's just a budgeting workshop. And what we're going to do is, first of all, talk about why budgeting is so important and why it's something that we really try to convince a lot of people to do. And then we're going to actually get into how to do it and what tools or what tricks you might be able to use to help yourself out with that a little bit. So we're going to talk about why it's important. We're going to talk about a few different budgeting methods, and then we're going to talk about a couple of tools that you can utilize to write your own budget or to kind of do your own thing if you want to do that. And I am a very informal teacher, so if you have any questions, if something isn't quite making sense, if you would like me to clarify something, please feel free just to raise your hand at any time, and I will stop what I'm talking about and answer any of your questions. I want to make sure, first and foremost, that this is valuable for you, and I want you to be able to utilize what I've got today for your own personal needs. And understand that everybody comes from a different financial background. We all come with our own experiences, we all come with our own values in where we want to spend our money, and we all come with different attitudes on what we think about money. So even though we have 30 people in this room, none of the 30 people think, act, or feel about money in the exact same way. So everything that I talk about is just from a very general standpoint, and understand that it can be applied differently to two completely different people. In working with people at the credit union, we meet with over 1,000 people every year to help them plan in the Wichita area, Lawrence, and Manhattan. And we approach it differently for every single person because even two people in a similar position or under similar circumstances will react very differently. So this is very general, overall information. And then if you have more specific questions, we are more than happy to answer those either right now or set up some time to meet with you one-on-one a little bit later to do that as well. Just to kind of show you how important finance is, this is kind of a little poll about New Year's resolutions. Some people try to set goals for themselves on what they want to accomplish in the new year, and you can see that there are 5 different very popular money resolutions that come up quite often. People want to save more money, they want to pay off debt, they want to try to reduce spending, they want to try to develop some savings for retirement or for down the road, and they also want to try to build an emergency fund. And we are going to talk very specifically about emergency funds because they're very key to your overall financial picture. The first thing we're looking at is 3 different studies that were done all around budgeting and how we budget as adults in the United States. All 3 surveys say something very similar. About 40% of adults in the United States budget their money on a regular basis, and about 60% of people don't. 3 different studies. One says 40% say they keep close track of their spending. Another one says 2/3 of American adults don't budget. And then a third one actually ties in education. They say that 38% of college graduates versus 26% of high school graduates keep close track of their spending and close track of their money on a month-to-month basis. When we talk about money and budgeting, there's more than one reason to keep a budget. A lot of people just consider budgeting as keeping track of their spending as they go throughout the month. And that's definitely one aspect of budgeting. But there's actually 5 different reasons that we like to teach about it. And the first is that you know that you're going to have enough money to cover your needs and your wants for the next month or for the next period of time. When we talk about budgeting at the credit union, we actually use it as a forecasting tool. Just like we watch the Weather Channel to see what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, or maybe what the weather's going to be like over the weekend, we keep budgets so that we know what could happen or what hopefully is going to happen with our money over the next 1 month or maybe 2 months. So when we write budgets, we're not just keeping track of what's happening right now, but we're also trying to predict into the future what might happen as well, so that we can set ourselves up for success. A lot of us have what I like to call financial landmines. Those are financial things that happen that if you land right on top of them, they kind of blow up your budget. But if you can see them coming, you can maneuver around them as best as possible. Yes?
What's an example of a financial landmine?
Tags for your vehicle, something that you are kind of sort of planning on, but it just kind of always ends up landing on top of us. Holiday savings and holiday spending is something that happens quite a bit. Tuition for school. You know that it's coming, but a lot of times it kind of catches us by surprise anyways. Not just tuition for school, but getting your supplies ready for school, getting your clothing ready for school. If you have children, getting them ready for school. All of those things can be considered financial landmines. Vehicle repairs. We know at some point in time our vehicle is going to need a repair. You can have a brand new vehicle and something inevitably is going to happen to it within the next 1 to 2 years. So things like that, things that hopefully we can plan on a little bit without even knowing exactly how much it's going to cost us. So that's what I would consider a financial landmine. So something that you can plan for, but we don't usually plan for very regularly. If you can see it coming a month or 2 ahead, that gives us a good opportunity to save up for it or to change some of our behavior so that we can wiggle our way around it or get around it as best possible. Now, something might happen that's a complete surprise. You might have a medical issue that happens to you that you had no idea was going to happen. As an example of that, my sister-in-law was walking about a month ago on a sidewalk, slipped on ice, and broke her hand. Absolutely hard to predict that that is actually going to happen. That's why we develop emergency accounts to make up for some of those things that we have. Not a lot of people saw the government shutdown that we just endured happening. And if you work at a government institution or if you work for a school that might be partially or fully funded by government funds, that might be an issue. So having a savings account for things that you can't even predict is something that's really great to do for yourself, so that if something does happen, you've got a little bit of money to fall back on. A lot of experts say you should have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up in that account. Now that's a lot of money for most people. So what I tell people is try to save $500 to start. Once you hit that $500 mark, try to push yourself to $1,000. Once you hit that $1,000, try to push yourself to about $2,000 and incrementally work up from there. If you try to eat the elephant in one bite, it's going to be really hard to do. But if you take it step by step or bite by bite, set little goals and accomplish those little goals along the way, you're going to find that it's a lot easier to do. So having a budget allows you to forecast for the future. It allows you to see a little bit ahead and take care of yourself if you need to. The second reason that we budget, it allows us to save money. It allows us to do things like develop that emergency savings accounts. When I talk to people about savings, I treat savings like it's an expense. You pay your rent every month, you pay your car payment every month, you pay your utilities every month, you pay your savings account every month. And we put it in the budget just like we do any other expense. If you treat savings like an expense, it adds immediacy to it. It adds importance to it. It makes it feel like it's something that you should be doing on a regular basis. Most people, when they say they're going to save money, they say they're going to save whatever's left over at the end of the month. What happens is we're really good at spending money, a lot of us. And so we don't have a lot of money left over at the end of the month. So if we treat savings like it's something we should do every single month, and we put it in our budget as an expense, then it becomes something that we actually get accomplished and that we actually do. So saving is very important to set yourself up with a good financial base, and having a budget lets you set aside some money to save, and it helps you work into that thing. Some people call savings, or the way that they use savings is they say pay yourself first. What that means is when you get any money that comes in, before you spend that money, put a little bit of that money in savings right away so that you don't spend it, or that you don't save it up to spend for later, but it actually goes into your savings account. However you want to do savings, whatever gimmick you use, as long as you do it and it's consistent, that's a great way to do it. The third reason that we budget is because it reduces stress. I'm not going to talk a lot about this right now because I'm coming back next month and I'm going to teach a whole class on how money and budgeting reduces stress. So I'm not going to give away all my secrets tonight. I want you to come back in a month. But I will tell you that the number one stressor consistently for the past decade in American adults is money and financial issues. The American Psychological Association puts out a survey every year, and it's been in the top 3 for the past decade. And it's the only consistently themed issue that has been in the top 3 for the past decade. Ironically enough, the number one stressor in 2017, which is the last survey that came out, was politics and political issues. It ranked 1 percentage point above money and finance, but it wasn't nearly as big the year before. Stress does things to us physically, and it does things to us emotionally, and it makes it more difficult to make decisions. So when we budget, we not only do it for our finance life, but we also do it for our emotional and our physical health as well. But like I said, we're going to talk about that next month. Number 4 is having a budget helps you eliminate or reduce bad financial habits that you have set for yourself. A recent study in the United Kingdom said that we set our bad financial habits by the time we are about 7 or 8 years of age. So all of us in this room can already know if we're good at saving money or if we're not very good at saving money. I am one of those people that's not very good at saving money. As a financial professional, as a financial counselor, I have trouble overspending sometimes. So having a budget allows me to set limits on those things that I overspend on. I can still spend some money on it, but I don't spend all of my money on those things. I divide it out between a lot of different categories. Having a budget keeps me a little bit under control, and it makes sure that everything's going to get paid before I go crazy with the rest of the money that I have. And it helps you plan out how you're going to spend that money over a long period of time. Lastly, budgeting helps us stay out of debt, and if we have debt, it helps us pay that debt off. A lot of people utilize credit cards if they don't have money in order to cover what they need to cover. We call that kind of emergency money or emergency spending, maybe kind of a safety net, but we utilize that safety net far too often if we don't have a budget, because we overspend and then we fall back on the credit card, and then we overspend again and we fall back on the credit card, and sooner or later we run out of money that we can utilize on that credit card, and the minimum payments start to stack up. I was just recently interviewed by a local news station down in Wichita where I live, and the entire story that they interviewed me about was, how do people get into such big debt over Christmas? And really the magic in that is, if you're using a credit card, it's much easier to lose track of how much money you're actually spending. Because it isn't your money that you're using, it's the bank's money. It's a lot easier for us to buy things that we wouldn't necessarily buy if we were using the cash that was in our pockets. So having a budget lets us stick to that money that's in our pockets instead of having to go to a credit card And then we can find extra money in our budget to help pay down some of that debt and pay off some of that debt. So when we use credit cards, it gives us the perception that we make more or we spend less than we actually do. Researchers have shown that we spend about 15 to 18% more on shopping trips when we use a credit card versus when we use cash. So cash gives us the ability to kind of rein it in a little bit where we wouldn't do that so much if we were using a credit card. Does it make sense? So having that budget allows us to kind of control the spending that we're doing. So when we talk about budgeting, what we recommend is once you've committed to having a monthly budget, try as hard as you can not to go over that budget and to utilize debt. If you do go over that budget, we like you to have an emergency savings account instead of a credit card to fall back on. Now, are credit cards necessarily a bad thing? They're not. Credit cards are a good tool for you to use in proper proportion. Or under a budget, it's still okay to use a credit card every once in a while, as long as you have a good exit strategy for how you're going to pay that credit card off. I'm okay with people getting debt as long as you go into that debt already having a plan for how you're going to get back out of that debt if you need to get back out of it. Yeah?
What's a good ratio, like total money that you have? Let's say you make a certain amount of money. What's a good ratio to have like credit card debt compared to money you make?
Let me answer the question a little bit different way. Experts say that with your credit cards, you should keep your balances under 30% of your credit limit that you have on the credit card. So if you have a $1,000 credit limit, you should always have your balance under $300 for every $1,000 that you borrow. As far as a specific percentage, it really determines, or it really is based on what your overall financial picture looks like. If your rent is high and your car payment's high, then you're really not going to want to have a lot of high credit card balances to even that out as well. But if you don't have any other debt and you're kind of relatively okay with everything else, then you can afford to maybe have just a tiny bit more debt that's going. I would tell the average person, don't keep a lot of money in debt. Try to pay for as much stuff as you can with savings and with cash, because that's going to cost you less money in interest as well. But if you want a good credit score, you have to use credit just a little bit. So there's a good balancing act. It's probably better on a case-by-case basis than just generally. But I would say if you make, let's use $30,000 a year, then it's probably good to have less than about $3,000 in debt. So I would say, however that lines out with percentages, would that be 1%, I think, or something? Yeah, 10%. So, sorry, I don't have a calculator in front of me. I'd say 10% or less in debt is probably a good place to stop.
What about these cards that come out and say that they have like 0% interest rate for 12 months or something like that?
So the good thing about those is they don't have any interest. The bad thing is after that 12-month period, if you don't pay it off, a lot of those retro back to the full balance that you had on it. So you might end up getting charged interest on the entire amount that you charged. Credit card companies know that a certain percentage of people are going to fall over that 12-month period of time. So they factor that into their finances when they present those 0% credit card offers. They want to get your business so you'll continue to use the credit card after that 12 months expires. I think at one point in time, I saw a statistic that said 88% of people don't meet all of the requirements to not pay any interest on those credit cards. So those credit cards are good at getting people to roll balances over, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get the card paid off before the promotional rate expires. So I would tell you to not jump over to a bunch of those different credit cards. If you do it one time and then work really hard to get it paid off, I'm fine with it. But if you continue to jump from credit card to credit card, it actually lowers your credit score. So it ends up being kind of a disadvantage over a long period of time. Does that answer that question?
One more question.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a credit card, you have a balance of $1,000 or something, and you pay $500, and that's more than the minimum payment. What rolls over? Are you still going to be getting charged that 20% or whatever the interest rate is?
Yes. Any balance that you have, that if you're not paying off your statement balance from the month prior, then you will get charged interest on the amount of money that is rolled over. Yes.
That's remaining.
Yeah, that's remaining on it. And you're gonna have to look at your credit card agreement to make sure, because different credit card companies calculate that differently. Some will charge you the full balance and they'll retro it back. Others will charge you what was left over or what you rolled over for that month. So you wanna make sure that whatever you've agreed with for that credit card company is what you're doing. So there's a lot of credit cards that have annual or sometimes even monthly fees as well in order to use the card. So I would recommend trying to avoid those cards if you can. A lot of people will utilize cards to get miles or to get extra points and stuff like that. But you really have to consider, why is that credit card company offering those points? Why are they offering the miles? And a lot of it is to get you to pay interest. And if you actually calculate it out, you're paying more in interest sometimes than you are in the benefit that you're receiving from that credit card. So that's why it's important, I think, really to try to avoid using credit cards on a regular basis. If you need to use them for a larger purchase and then pay it down quickly, I'm fine with that. That's not where a lot of people get their balances high on the credit cards. It's every day using it at the gas station, in the grocery store, and McDonald's and Burger King and stuff like that. It's not the big purchases that get people in trouble. It's the little purchases maybe that do that sometimes. So, does that answer your question? Okay, awesome. So how do you budget? What are the 4 steps in order to budget? And I actually have with me one thing that I think is the greatest tool that you can utilize in a budget, and that is a little notebook. You can buy these at Dillon's for $2 or $3. What I recommend is that you become a really good note taker when it comes to writing out your budget on a regular basis. Keep track of where you're spending your money and how you're spending that money, so that next month you can do even better at forecasting how much money you're going to spend. So the 4 steps in budgeting are this. They're very simple. The first step is you have to know what income is going to be coming in for the next month, or the next period, however you budget. And you need to know 3 things about that income. First thing you need to know is how much. The second thing you need to know is when it's going to get here. And the third thing you need to know is where it's coming from. Now, what if you have an income that's very hard to measure? Or I know that some of you maybe receive grant money at the very beginning of the semester and it has to stretch for the remainder of the semester. So how do you do that with income in your budget? What I would say is, if you have income coming in every month, but it varies from month to month, you can either use the minimum amount that you expect to receive, or you can use an average of what you've received for the past 3 months. Let's say that you know that you will at least receive $1,000 a month, then go ahead and use that $1,000. Or you receive an average of about $1,200, then go ahead and use that $1,200. So use the minimum you're expected to receive or the average. Let's say you get paid in January and you're not going to receive any other income until June or July. What do you do if you get a large lump sum and you have to make that stretch out over a few months? What I would recommend to do with that is figure out what your average expenses are for the month, and then put all of that lump sum money into your savings account and pay yourself smaller increments over the next few months. So let's say you receive a $3,000 lump sum amount in January, and that has to last you all of February, March, and April. You could divide that into 3 $1,000 chunks and take out $1,000 in February, take out $1,000 in March, and take out $1,000 in April. That way you've stretched that entire amount of money over a longer period of time. School teachers have to do this a lot with their income. Where I'm from in Wichita, most school teachers get paid just once a month, but they have weekly expenses. So we divide that once a month. Let's say it's $2,000 a month. We divide it into $500 weekly increments. They put the money in their savings account and they pay themselves $500 every week. So you can take this large sum of money, divide it into chunks, and pay yourself in smaller increments, or withdraw smaller increments over a certain period of time. That helps you take a 3-month grouping and divide it out by 1 month. Or you can do it even smaller and divide it by every 2 weeks. Instead of doing $1,000 chunks, maybe you can do 2 $500 chunks every month. One on the 1st of the month and one on the 15th of the month. And that way it will last you throughout the entire duration. So you can make any amount of income coming in, a monthly or even a weekly income, by figuring out how it divides into a monthly or how it divides into a weekly calendar. So figuring out that income is the first step in writing a good solid budget. The second step is to analyze your expenses, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this. What you need to know about your expenses are, first of all, how much money are you spending every month? The second thing that you need to know is, where is that money being spent? And the third thing you need to know is, well, I've got these two mixed up, is the when and the where. So the second thing is, when is that money going to be spent? And the third thing is, where is it going? The when is just as important as the how much. Because if you get that wrong, you end up paying extra in penalties and extra in fees, and it just continues to drain your budget a little bit. So what I would like you to do is to look at this form real quick. And what we're actually going to do with this form, we are going to fill this form out right now. We're just going to do a real quick little budget. And we're going to let you guys throw in some of the expenses that we have in here. And just to show you how to fill this budget out. And then if you like this budget form, we have extra copies, and we can have them make extra copies as well. So you can have as many copies as you would like to have. And I'll send this budget to Yosh so that she can have this to print out for any one of you, or you can have it electronically. So like we said, the first thing we're going to figure out is our income. So we're going to work with a $2,000 income. So in the top right-hand side, go ahead and put $2,000 at the very top of that. And then your total income there is going to be $2,000. I'm going to play along too so I don't get lost. Now this next thing we need to figure out is rent. So somebody tell me, for a really economically charged apartment, about how much do you think that you would end up paying in rent? 500? Okay, we'll use 500. So where it says rent or mortgage, under this first orange category, we're going to put $500 in rent. Now, because you're renting, you won't have a second mortgage. You probably maybe have renter's insurance. So go ahead and put $10 for renter's insurance. And then you're probably not going to need to pay for security or to keep the yard maintained or anything like that. So the total under your household expenses or under your housing expenses is going to be $510. So you can put that in your orange blank. And then we're going to also carry that $510 for the blank down at the bottom right-hand side where we're adding up all the categories. So that's $510 for that orange blank. The next thing is food expense. How much do you think it costs for one person to survive on food in restaurants for a month? What do you think the average is for that?
150.
Okay. The government says about $150 to $175 per person. I usually give between $150 to $200 depending on the person's appetite. So I would say $150 for groceries is probably a really good amount to put in there. So we'll put $150 there. And then yes or no on restaurants. Do you want to put some money in for restaurants? How much?
$100.
$100? Okay. So how much are we spending on food and restaurants for a month? $250. So we're going to put $250 down here. Now the next one is utilities. For air or electricity, about how much are we usually spending at an apartment?
$90.
Okay, I'd say 75 to 90 bucks. So to make it easy, yeah, let's put 90 bucks there. Now, we'll say for natural gas for heat, we'll say that this is an electric-only apartment, so we won't put any there. What you'll notice about electric and air is that as the electricity goes down over the winter, the natural gas typically goes up. So those typically balance each other out pretty well throughout the year. Water, if you're an apartment, we're going to say the water's already covered. What about cell phone plan? What do you think the average cell phone plan is?
$100.
Okay, $100, we're talking $100 per person, okay? I usually hear a lot of grumbling in there because it can be anywhere from $50 to like $300. So we'll just go with a nice average of 100. Usually don't have to cover trash in there. So for monthly utilities, what do we have covered in that? 190? Okay. What about transportation? Can anybody guess what the average car payment is in the United States right now? It's higher than $350. It's right around $490. So we're not gonna do that. We're gonna say you guys got a sweet deal at the car dealership. So we're gonna say for your car payment, we're gonna say you guys got a good deal with a $200 a month car payment. That's probably, if you have decent credit, that's probably about an $8,000 or $9,000 vehicle, which gets us to and from school and gets us to and from work for now. That's why we're in school, is so we can be driving that Rolls Royce later on, right? What about gasoline? What do you think gasoline expenses on a monthly basis?
60 to 100 bucks.
60 to 100. The way that I ask this in a financial counseling appointment is, how often do you fill up your gas tank every month? Usually it's about once or twice, or usually it's about once a week or once every 2 weeks, and I usually average about $25 to about $35 a tank. So I think 60 to 100 is good. We're gonna go ahead and be a little economical with this and put $60 for gasoline. What about insurance for your vehicle? Okay. Usually about 100 to 150 for a vehicle is pretty decent. I would imagine that. So we'll go ahead and put $120 for this, for your insurance. And then this is something that not a lot of people budget for, but I think it's really important to have a set aside savings account for vehicle repairs. Because when they happen, they land on us like a landmine, right? Those aren't things that we plan for. So let's go ahead and put an additional $20 a month aside for either oil changes or for car repairs. So how much money did we spend on transportation this month? $400? That's what I got too, $400. All right, what about health expenses? Now, usually in a lot of circumstances, people are covered with health expenses, either by the job that they have, they're covered with that, or they're covered under a government plan. Sometimes you have to go out and buy your own private or public health insurance. We're gonna say, just for the sake of not getting too messy here, that you guys are already covered, but sometimes you'll have co-pays for doctor's visits. Sometimes you'll have prescriptions that you need to purchase. Sometimes you'll have supplements or vitamins that you need to purchase, so there's extra expense there. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that we're gonna spend $20 a month on medication and vitamins, and we'll just have that cover us there. So for health expense, we're spending $20, so carry that over. Now we have a whole slew of extra expenses that we need to consider. Monthly clothing budget. What would you give yourself for a monthly clothing budget? Some are gonna say zero, some are gonna say $400, right? This is another one of those value propositions where a lot of people are different in how they like to spend their money. Some people think clothing is something that's very important. Some people think it's not at all important. Just so you guys have something to give yourselves, we're gonna give you guys a $50 budget for clothing every month on here. So write $50 in there. Life insurance is something that isn't required, but it's something that's good to have. We're gonna say zero for life insurance for now, but I want you to consider that that's something at some point in time that might not be a bad idea to cover yourself.
How much will that average for like a grown-up?
For life insurance, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on whether you're buying term or whole life insurance. Term insurance expires after a certain period of time. Whole life insurance is something that you're continuing to develop or continuing to deposit into.
Does that ever go up and down?
What's that?
Whole, does that just stay a set rate or?
Whole, you can usually buy into it and lock in at a certain point in time depending on what kind of coverage that you're buying. Another thing that is considered is your health and also the health of your parents as well, because that has genetically something to do with how your health is going to go also. Remember, life insurance companies want you to live as long as you possibly can so they don't have to pay out. And so anything that could shorten the expected life that you are going to have is going to raise your health care, or going to raise your life insurance costs, because they're going to have to pay out their life insurance policy earlier, so they're not going to get to invest it themselves for a longer period of time.
So like a dangerous career too, right?
It could be a dangerous career. It could be genetic illnesses that maybe you have, or it could even be depression medication can change that depending on who you're going with as well. Other types of medication can do that as well. So there's lots of different factors that go into that.
Do they look at like freak accidents? Like do they look at your health history?
Typically not freak accidents, because those are things that aren't expected.
What if you're like a person that's been like multiple car accidents?
That could end up impacting. So yeah, so that could end up impacting your driving history. Could end up impacting that. If you are a cigarette smoker, that could end up impacting that. If you drink alcohol on a regular basis, that could also have an impact as well. So each life insurance company does a little different, so that's something to kind of investigate, but understand that every person in this room is going to be a little different when it comes to that. So we'll skip that for now. Toiletry, personal care items. Oh, I'm sorry, let's go back. Child care. Do we want to have kids yet or not?
Yes.
Okay, we can skip that for now. That can be something that can be really, really expensive as you go though, so make sure to keep that in mind also. Toiletries and personal care items. How much a month do you think you want to spend on those?
$10.
10 bucks? All the women are like, are you kidding me?
Like 40.
Let's go ahead and go 40 on there, just to be on the safe side. We'll buy that 2-ply toilet paper, right? What about cosmetics, hair, and nails? This is another one that can go like crazy directions, right? So what do you think the average person, cosmetics, hair, and nails?
20 to like 200.
Okay, 20 to